All right, welcome to step 15. We need to have a little chat real quick. First and foremost, when I was looking at the instructions here, they don't give you a part number for the light that goes on the fender. The next thing I noticed is that there's a part J6 and a part J7, and while those headlights assemblies are very similar, they are not the same thing. Take a look on your kit if you want, but this right here is J6 and this part right here is J7. You can see that there is a difference. Well, when I put these two parts on earlier, I had a J6 and a J7. Well, that's not going to work because I need a J7 for this. So I had to cut this off. This did its best to do a tweezer launch. Thankfully, I was able to find it. But on the back side of this now, it's completely full of the plastic material that was used as the nub for this to seat on. Now I was able to put this piece on and seat it as well as I could see so that it looks correct, but now I'm gonna have to cut the nub off of this right here and place this on and hopefully place it correctly. So when you're dealing with kit parts, even if they look really, really close to the same, make sure you're using the right part, unless otherwise noted, because you're gonna end up with a screw up like I just did. All right, moving on. I'm gonna skip this photo etched part right here till the end like I did before. I'm going to put on C7, get that started. And when we were talking in the last episode about the black super glue or the tire super glue or whatever we want to call it, and I used the debonder, the uncure for it, I cannot find out what the material is that is used to create the debonder. It must be proprietary, or they just don't want to label it, or they don't have to, but it does cause some crazing and discoloration of the plastic. So being aware of that, probably not something that I'm going to keep using if I have to do a lot of work with the plastics. So I've got that on. Now I have this piece right here, and there is a small indicator right there of where this goes. What's nice is that even though it's hard to see, Hobby Boss did. Now you got to make sure you orient this right. So it's nice that these locator portions are really, really light and hard to see, because it means that you're not going to have to do a lot of cleanup, or it's not going to really detract from the kit. But that said, that's what the part looks like. This is where the headlight and the head assembly goes. Large pin in, what's going to end up being, or sorry, large pin out, which is going towards the side lights, and the side indicator. The two smaller pins go towards the cab or the interior of the kit. Now that that's on, moving on, I'll put PE part MD17 on in this area right here. Once again, I'm going to forego putting on parts either GP2-5 or GP2-6, as they are clear parts and I want to paint first. And I have a choice again of J4 or GP1-1, the clear part for the headlamp. I am now going to fold this, and I'm going to use my forceps to do this real quick. This is down and dirty. Just to get that done. 90 degrees. Looks good. I want to touch those nubs up real quick. And sometimes, and this is what I found out last time, actually I did do all the cleanup before the steps, but sometimes you just don't get all the cleanup done the way you thought you did. And with that, you have to go back, and sometimes it looks kind of embarrassing on the video. Like you didn't do it at all, but you actually did. You just didn't notice that you needed to get more. Now with that, I will add the glue, put this on, and this time I'm going to, as I stated on the other video, I'm going to align this with the bottom of the mounting hole right there rather than the top. Now, the regular glue here is also causing some sort of discoloration amongst the plastic. So this might just be a, you know, whatever plastic Hobby Boss was using for this particular kit is more reactive. It's possible. All right, having done that, I'm going to get down to doing what needs to be done. First and foremost is I have to trim this little nub off. Makes me a little nervous, but there it is. Now I know per about where it needs to fit the kit part, like so. I can compare it to the other one to make sure that it's not too high or too low, too left or too right. This just takes, this is the troubleshooting portion of our program. This is what drives a lot of modelers kind of crazy, makes them a little cranky. So what I'm doing is looking at this. It looks like I've just about got it right, maybe a little bit too low. And it gets a little bit easier here for a while to set this as the glue starts to thicken and the plastic welding is taking place. So I'm looking at it from top. All right, I think that looks fair. Put that in. This feels good. Now I'm going to work on putting the rods on. And since I don't want to use very much of the debonder slash uncure, sometimes your tip gets plugged. So when your tip gets plugged, clean it out. The nice thing about this is that the glue, when it's not cured, or it's partially cured, it's kind of gooey, so it kind of comes out like a little rubber plug. And then you don't need to worry about it. Okay, see, always check your parts because this thing did twist. Either I hit it with my hand or it's not happy. But always check your part orientation on things you've previously put on just to make sure they don't get screwed up. And again, yeah, it seems like once I've done that and I twist it, it twists back. And that is entirely possible. It may just have some sort of tension that's giving it a twist as the glue is curing. So I'm just dipping this in to get the minimal amount of glue on there, putting it in there, putting it on there. That looks good. I'm going to let that start to set. Yes, this is kind of fussy. Minimal amount there, minimal amount there. And it's twisting. Now that's one of the problems of dealing with, I'm going to call them rods, is that they twist when you're working with them inside of like tweezers or some sort of a clamp. I'm sure that there's some fancy engineering term for what's going on, but essentially what it is it's not helping you get your parts to align. That's done. So now rather than chemically, I'm going to mechanically remove this glue. And I can come back later with a hobby knife to get rid of more if I want, just to clean it up and make it look a little bit nicer. Most of what I'm interested in is just having a nice solid bond. That's not going anywhere. That looks good. Set that aside for a moment to let that start to cure. At this point in time, I'm cleaning off any excess glue on my forceps. Sometimes I can get it off by hand, other times I will take an X-Acto blade. Now, doing it on the outside is mostly just for looks or because I want to, but this is what's important, is on these two flat surfaces, so that I know I've got my surface for when I'm squeezing clean and clear of any problems. So at this point in time, all that I should have left to do, okay, so I made a point about J7. I pointed it out to you. We know that part, what that part is and what that needs to be done. I've added it, so there, now it's out of the way. At the same time, I need to remind myself that this has not been added. This has not been added. So now when I come back through, I'll note those two things. And I also need to add a little yellow part there to remind myself that I don't have the clear part in that either. So this is a little bit of a mess up on Hobby Boss's part with the instructions. The clear piece that goes in there. Alright, now looking back at this, how's that look? Good enough. Looking at this piece right here, looks good. And like I said, as far as these headlamps go, these assemblies, they can be off. It's more a matter of personal taste if you like to give it that kind of off look so that it's a little bit different from everybody else's build, or if you want to have it nice and square because it looks better that way. I don't think anybody's going to hold it against you either way that wouldn't hold it against you anyway. Meaning, hey, how come you didn't do it the way I would do it? Well, because I'm not you. You make a valid point, I'm going to do it my way anyway. So, have fun with it. That's what personal choice is all about. So I'm using my knife blade now to take some of that excess glue that I put out for the rods for this. And again, I'm going to use that notch right there. I'm going to let it catch. This time I'm going to hold it a little bit just so it starts to set just a touch. Then I'm going to come to this side and I'm going to check on straight, level, square. Careful. Did get a little bit of the glue on my fingers, but I think it's okay. That said, I'm checking all my directions here and it looks good. Again, do another check on this. How does that look? Is that square? Square enough. How does the front look? The front looks okay, except for, of course, the markings from that black glue. I am cleaning up my knife a little bit, and then I'm going to go through here now and just clean up around the edges. Some people may not like this idea. They may want to do something different. That's fine. This is how I'm doing it. I like how this works. Really wish that the debonder and plastic didn't react, but you gotta change up if you have problems. And I'm not so much worried about the debonder really messing up the model as much as, in this case, I don't want it to mess it up and to instruct all of you, hey, let's just screw this up. So now that these are together and glued, the next part that we're supposed to do is attach them to the frame. Now I've been warned that while putting the parts on for the driver's side or left-hand side are okay and everything seems to fit fine, putting the parts onto the right side can be a little apparently tricky as far as keeping things straight and level. We'll see. I think it just has to do with these mounts that we're putting the framework on. It may also have a little bit more to do with the fact that we've got more framework on this side than that side, in that this is on here. This photo etch piece we've got to deal with on the passenger side. Now it looks like, and I'm saying it looks like because I'm not sure, it looks like that's how this all mounts together, just like that and that. Not a lot of positive attachment points, but that's what it appears to be so far. So I did my dry fitting, looks okay. I'm going to very carefully turn this around. I'm going to look this over specifically for this side. It goes in on this side, mounts up there. The problem I'm having is I don't see a positive mount for the frame piece right in here. I believe it's C2. I don't see what that attaches to. It says in the instructions right here that it attaches to, it looks like part of the framework in here, but I'm not seeing that positive attachment point. It kind of is there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist this back a little bit and then go back in, because it looks like overall what it is that this frame, this photo etch piece here, the framework attaches there, this obviously attaches here, and then this cross piece or support bar or whatever should attach to the framework piece right here. So it probably needs a swivel, and but I don't know how much angle this should have. So what I'm using is the butt edge of this here and setting that up there to see if that is my squaring, because it doesn't really show me in the instructions anywhere in here how this is supposed to square up. And that, as far as squaring up to the framework, it looks pretty doggone close, but again, this right here is the problem. Looks like it needs to be back at some sort of a strange angle. That's the nice thing about working with plastic model glue, is you can adjust and adjust and adjust by just twisting the part, and that's a lot closer. So just a little bit more. I'm going to move that out of the way. See how this fits. There's that. There's that. And is it square? It's at this point, and I think I'm going to go with the glue to help me start holding things down. I may even want to consider, and I think I will, putting some black super glue in there so that I can push it in and get it to hold harder for that, because I'm not going to get any support, I don't believe, from that photo etch piece on the frame yet. So I'd rather have the strength of the bond be with the other support here, the one that's going to be harder to control. So as you can see, I've put a little bit of the black super glue there. And I already put glue on this. So line it up, got it in there. And then using my forceps coming up from underneath. Now is that square? It doesn't look square. It looks like it needs to be out a little bit. So this gets to be kind of strange engineering, I'll call it. Takes a little bit of work, a little bit of luck, and a little bit of luck. So now I'm looking at the frame piece here. That looks good. Everything looks good from the side, from right to left. What I should be doing at this point is figuring out how the hood is going to be fitting on here, because that might be able to give me a clue as far as what that needs to go up against. Yes, it looks like there should be a small amount of room in there, but I'm not 100% sure I can do it with just the hood and not with, well, they call it the engine bonnet. I will try the engine bonnet just to see if I've got the clearance that I need. So they don't have a part listed for it, it's just engine bonnet. Be aware. And it comes in the nice plastic package as a separate piece wrapped in styrofoam. So it's very nice. Hobby Boss is looking after their parts, making sure that some of these delicate, important pieces aren't going to get messed up. So there's that. Now the problem is I don't have any of the material inside here, or any of the framework built up on here. It looks like, from what I can see, it looks like it goes on like that. A little more helper advice probably would have been good from Hobby Boss on this. But that does look correct. It looks like those parts go up in, and it will have the front bumper piece on here, and it will fit. So what you want to do in this case, as far as fitting these fenders on, is when you get the left and the right, okay, this needs to be square, is what you're aiming for now, more than anything. And yeah, that looks good. That gap is not a problem. So I'm going to take that off. I'm going to say as long as the framework and the fender is square that way, and the framework and the fender is square this way, framework here, fender here, that you're going to be able to fit your part on and have it fit the way it should as the build. So there's big hint number 2. I honestly wish I did not have to do big hints in that, but that's why we've also got the series, right? That's why I'm doing this. So this needs to be lifted up when this part goes on, because those fender parts are a little bit longer than the bottom of the framework. Now, what I'm seeing is that the cut that's in the back of this is not as deep. I wish I could show this better here. There we go. So that part goes to about right there, and some of the notch still sticks out. I'm trying to decide if I want to, and that also is not allowing the photo etch part right there to meet the side. Now, how much of a gap and difference is there? Quite a bit of a difference there. That's quite large. So I want it to go in I can either cut this notch bigger or I can shave that down. Next thing I'm going to do is look underneath and see where does the framework stop with it. So it's there. So there is some room to keep going with that piece of framework. And if you can see on the other side, the front part J2 went in quite a ways. So it looks like this is just off by a bit. When Hobby Boss did it, like maybe a couple millimeters. So what I'm gonna do is say that this part right here on the side, which is also sagging down quite a bit and needs to be put up level like so, I'm gonna say that that notch is the offending part right there, and that needs to be cut down so that we have room to work with. Now, cutting it down with a knife is probably what we would most want to do, but I'm going to take my side nippers and take about half of that off. I still want some locating and positive location capability out of it, but I don't want it for the whole. I don't want the whole piece. And then I'm going to scrape that down. I'm going to come back that way and clean it up. So I should still get some positive location, but I should also be able to move this side to side as needed. There we go. To give me the desired setup. So why this is so much different, I don't know, but it is. So anyhow, I've got this glued on, or I've got this dry fit. As it sits, this looks like about the right position to be in to get that square and level, but notice there's quite a difference in the gap for the hood when it's set up. And that's right now, this is pushed up against the framework on that side. It may be that the radiator's off a little bit and it should be more centered. It's all the parts are where they're supposed to be, but it's a possibility. However, it looks right. So this is where I want to put this. I'm going to do the same thing I did the last time. I'm going to put some of the super glue on the wrong side, apparently. So I'll take that off. I do not want to have super glue on the wrong side. Put some of this super glue on the right side of the frame, like so. Then I'm going to take and put a fair amount of glue, regular model glue, on that. And that's it for right now. And then I'm going to square this all up as best I can. And squaring it is the important part. Looking down from the top, I want to move this as needed to get this square. That's what I want first. And I'm using the line right here of the fender with the line of the body, because I don't need it all the way. Next, I'm looking at it from bottom to top. This is where the front piece is probably going to be the most important for that angle. This is going to be hard to show, but I am now pressing this while making sure that it's underneath with the plastic, and that should be good. And that should square it up. And aside from using the radiator as a reference, they look square from the front now. Even though the gap is different on each side, they look square to the frame. And from the top to the bottom, they look square. That's holding. underneath. I'm going to take this real quick and very carefully push this down, see how it looks. And I think that looks pretty doggone good. Looks a little, I'm gonna have to, there we go. I'm guessing here, guys. Pretty hard, but that looks good. Actually, this looks off now. So I need to check that I didn't just push everything down. Looks like when I did that, I tweaked it down a little bit, so be careful with what you're doing. Anyhow, so now that I've got that, what I'm going to do is go in and put some super glue in for the photo etch to plastic connection, because these connections are going to be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more touchy, and maybe take a little bit more abuse. So I'm going to come in from behind on this one. I'm going to use my X-Acto knife so I can go in a little bit more precisely and then just draw it along as I go. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but the nice thing is I can hold the piece in place there. Now it's started to stick. And if that mess is too much of a mess for me underneath the bottom, I don't have a problem with that in particular right now because of where it is. But if for somebody else it is, you can go back under and clean it, but it's also underneath. So dirt, accumulation, or just hard to see, or something like that. Now the same thing is going to happen with this. I'm going to slightly push it out. Got too much glue on there. Come at this from whatever angle I can to get in there. And then glue that brace on. This one I'm going to add a little bit of glue from the outside just because I'm worried that if I don't, considering how small the surface area is where it's touching, it's not going to take. Okay, so there's that. Clean my blade off from the glue best I can, and then I can go in, and in this case on the framework, just scrape this clean. Now, considering where these two parts are, I can leave it as is. I might even take the debonder in there, but this gets the part cleaned up, at least to my level of satisfaction. And now the fenders are attached. Looking at the fenders from above, they look square and straight with the frame. Looking at the fenders from the front, for the most part, they look square and straight with the frame. That's probably a little bit more worrisome. And looking at it from the side, they might be a little high in comparison to the frame. We'll have to see how that all works out. It looks like they might point up instead of being more level. But there aren't any positive markings otherwise. They look reasonably close, so that's something that I will keep an eye on, and if we need to talk about it, we will. So that's step 15. We are halfway through all the steps for the prime mover, and it looks like we start the cab next. So this might be the end of the framework. See y'all for 16.